Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, I thought I'd do an impromptu short video on what's going on with the price of gold and silver because a lot of people are panicking and I wanted to put your minds at ease for those of you that have been stacking for a while or even for those of you that maybe just started putting away gold and silver for future use. I don't consider gold or silver as an investment. And of course, this is not financial advice. I'm just bringing this to you from a layman perspective so that hopefully the majority of you will understand where I'm coming from and will understand that there's really nothing to worry about when it comes to something that's real compared to something that's not. So what I want to do is I want to go back in time at least 5 years in order to preserve your time and not make this video an hour long. And I wanted to share with you just some thoughts that came to my mind when it has to do with gold and silver. And at first, it may not make too much sense of what I'm talking about, but in the end, it will all come together. And hopefully for those of you that maybe don't understand what's going on, that light bulb will come on. You'll be like, oh, okay. So let's start back in 2020, right? I only went back 5 years because in the last 5 years, we've had a lot of inflation comparatively speaking to some of the years prior to that. But we can actually take this and take it all the way back to 1913, which was when the creation of the Federal Reserve came to be, and the income tax, by the way, but I digress. So take a look at the average electricity price in the US back in 2020. So I've already got this pulled up. So if you take a look at the average electricity price from 2020, we're going to go and see where's it at. You're going to have to bear with me because like I said, this is impromptu. So January of 2020, the average price of electricity in the US was roughly 13 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay, let's take it to current. Right now it's 19 cents per kilowatt hours. I'm going to be doing these numbers off the cuff, so I might be off by 1% or 2. So you're looking at roughly a 50% jump. So roughly 50%, let's call it 40-45% increase in the cost of electricity between 2020 and today, 2025. Right? That's just electricity. Now let's take a look at the average cost of house prices in the US from 2020 to current. So we have 2020 here, let's see, June of 19. Okay, that's the first quarter of 2020 is March. So March of 2020, the average price of a home in the US was $383,000. Today, the average price is $514,000. It's roughly a 30% increase in the average price of a home in the US in the last 5 years alone. Let's go ahead and do something for fun here. Let's go back to the year that I was born, 1971. All right, I was born in June of 1971, $28,600. The cost of a house has increased roughly 20-fold since the year I was born. This here is the average price of the cost of ground beef. And let's see what it is at 2020. January of 2020, the average price for ground beef in the US, $5.63. And now it's $8.04. So let's say $2.50 roughly, right? So that's about a 40% increase in price for ground beef over the last 5 years. And a lot of you probably already know where I'm getting at, but I got a couple other little nifty numbers here. The average price of a new vehicle. Okay, let's see what it was in 2020. So here, this is March of 2020, the first quarter, roughly, let's say about $38,000, the average price of a new car or a new vehicle on average in 2020. Today, it's $50,000. So that's an additional $12,000. That's roughly 30%. And now that we took those basic examples, I wanted to pick the things that were like basic things that pretty much everyone needs. We eat meat or food, you know, we drive cars, we live in houses, etc. I'm sure that if we went back and seen what the rent price was on average in the US, Of course, it's increased over the last 5 years. That's not something that we have to, argue about or even talk about. So this is your main household income, your median, household income in the U.S. Going back to 2020, it was $68,000. Now, this is your household income, not your average income for one person, right? Household income was $68,000. And let's take it to, I think this only goes all the way to the end of 2024 because obviously 2025 is not over. But now it's $83,000. So that's about $15,000 more than what it was back in 2020. And so you're looking at about a 25% increase. Now let's go ahead and do a full stop right now. And I'm going to ask you, is a 25% increase in the median home income in the U.S., does that keep up with the prices, the increase in prices that we just talked about? I think that the lowest increase in prices over the last 5 years was roughly 30% or so, and then everything else looked to be like 40% or more. So your salaries have not kept up with the price of things going up. I'll take a quick second to explain to those of you that may be new here, and if you are, thank you for joining in, that inflation is not the same as the price of things going up. The price of things going up is a symptom of inflation. When the monetary supply in an economy is inflated, meaning that there's more money introduced into the economy than what there was prior, then that is what causes the price of things to go up. Because you have more dollars in the system chasing the same amount of goods. That is why the government is so interested in keeping the gross domestic product high. Because the gross domestic product is what represents pretty much our labor, the stuff that we put out into the economy that we produced. So the higher that your GDP is compared to your debt, it means that, A, we may be borrowing money, but we're producing more, so it's not going to increase inflation. However, that's not the case because our gross domestic product, what we produce as a nation, is lower than the money that we're borrowing or putting into the system. And that is what makes the price of things go up. All right? It's the amount of money that's put into the system. Now I want to go ahead and shift real quick to gold and silver. Now, I'm not going to go back and put the percentages of everything that went up. We remember that salary obviously did not keep up with the price of things going up over the last 5 years. If you take a look at the price of gold going back to 2020, which is what we went back to previously, you'll see that on January of 2020, the price of gold is $1,316. And today, the price of gold is trading at $4,062 after that massive beatdown it had, which I was very happy to see for two reasons. It gives those people that understand, and I hope that you will understand this once I'm done here, the opportunity to get into the market at a lower price. Because trust me, remember Kmart used to have the blue light special? If you were in Kmart and a blue light came on, what did people do? Oh, this must be on sale. They're doing a blue light special. Let's rush over there and see if we can get that toilet paper at 50% off. People bought more of the stuff that was being sold at a lower price. That's what's happening with gold and silver now, in my opinion. It's having a blue light special. Not for the reasons that the powers that be wanted to have a blue light special, because what the powers that be want to do with smacking down the price of gold and silver as they did is to scare people out of the market. Why? Because central banks for the last 5, 6, 7 years have been buying more gold and hoarding more gold than any other time in history, really. And they're doing the same thing now with silver. So if you were a central bank, what would you want? To buy gold and silver at the high, or to smack it down, which they have the power to do with ETFs, with paper contracts, so that you can buy it lower. Now, this is all my opinion, but as you can see, everything that I've shown you so far is factual. The price of gold in 2020 was $1,300. Today is, let's say, $4,000. That is 3 times higher than what it was 5 years ago. So does a 200% increase on top of the price that it originally started at, right? So it's a 200% increase more than the highest thing that increased in value or in price, not value, in price over the last 5 years, which was homes. Of course it is. Gold has appreciated in nominal value 3 times more than what houses have appreciated in nominal value over the last 5 years. So, would you think that it's smart to hold gold for the long term to preserve your wealth? Or would you rather leave that cash sitting in a bank or under your mattress, losing purchasing power as the years go by? I believe that there's absolutely nothing to worry about, even if gold dips a little lower, which it could actually dip a lot lower. I think it can dip as low as 3,400. If they keep smacking it and they keep trying to cover their shorts in order to buy it back at a lower price, I believe it can dip as low as about $3,400, $3,600, something like that. So it can go lower, but that, in my opinion, would be a great opportunity for people to get into gold and silver. This is not a sponsored video. I'm not getting paid to do this. I'm just telling you what I think, and I'm showing you the facts. Before I continue, I wanted to take a quick minute to tell you about the awesome deal that SIMPURE is having and that they have extended to the Alaska prepper community. Ladies and gentlemen, take a look at the video that I put up yesterday about the national emergency that is currently happening right now. And that is that the government is easing back on EPA regulations that keep forever chemicals and other substances out of your water. Instead of trying to keep it out of the water so that Americans can become healthier as far as their water goes, they're letting companies leave that stuff in the water. It's getting in the groundwater. It's coming out of your tap. There's nothing you can do about it as far as how they regulate that industry, the water utilities, but you can make sure that your water that you consume and your family consumes is clean by getting a reverse osmosis filtration system. And they come in all sorts. They come under the sink, they come countertop, which is pretty much plug and play, and you can take it with you anywhere you want. And SIMPURE is giving us a great deal on my favorite under the sink RO system, which is the Q3. Now, if you take a look at my video that I put up, and I'll go ahead and leave it linked here so you can go right to it. I left a couple of links there. And if you leave a comment under that video, for every 10 units that are sold, SIMPURE is going to give me a unit so that I can give away to one of you that left a comment under that video. So go check out that video, all right? And hopefully you'll see the video. That way you'll see that it is really important that you know what you're drinking when it comes to water. And if you think that bottled waters are safe, go check that video out because bottled water is covered on that video as well. Bottled water is not as safe as you may think. So I want to say thank you to SIMPURE for giving us the opportunity to give away RO systems, hopefully to those of you that really need them. Now let's get back to this video and talk about silver. As you can see here, silver took a heck of a beat down as well. I think it was as high as like $53, almost $54, and now it got smacked down all the way to $48. But that, in my opinion, again, is a good thing. Can it go lower? I think so. But you have to remember that the trend is your friend, meaning that silver's been going up historically speaking, and it's going to continue to go up. Same thing with gold. Why is that, AP? How are you sure about that? Well, because as silver and gold go up, the dollar goes down. And the dollar only has one way to go, and it's down. A fiat currency has never survived the test of time, and neither will the dollar. It's just mathematics, ladies and gentlemen. Silver and gold will retain their purchasing power over time. That's why I say that I don't invest in silver and gold. I just hold my excess wealth, that extra money that you may have at the end of the month, if you're lucky enough nowadays to have a few extra dollars at the end of the month that you're not going to use for anything. You put it into silver or gold or both, and it will retain your purchasing power. And I'm going to prove that to you right now, just as I did with gold. If you take a look, January of 2020, silver was roughly $17 an ounce. I think it was 16 and change, but about $17 an ounce. And let's see where right here. Let's see, 16.70. So 17 bucks an ounce. And even after this massive beatdown, it's still at $48 an ounce, which means that it's $31 an ounce more today than it was back in 2020. That's almost 200%. In order for it to be a 200% increase on top of what it started at, the 17, it'd have to be about $51, $50 or so. So let's just say 180%. Is a 180% increase in the nominal price of silver enough to cover the increase in prices of the things that we went over in the beginning of the video? Absolutely, ladies and gentlemen, it definitely is. But silver and gold, in my opinion, are not money. They are money on the Constitution, but we have not used it as money for at least the last 100 years or so. Why? Federal Reserve, that's something you have to look into on your own if you're new to this type of conversation. Go ahead and read The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffith. You can find it on Amazon. It's a little bit of a dry read, but if you get into it, you'll understand why it is that they developed the Federal Reserve and why it is that the Federal Reserve is a big reason as to why they implemented the income tax into our Constitution. It's all a way to steal from you your wealth, your labor, your freedom, your liberties, ladies and gentlemen. That's all it is. No, it's not a conspiracy theory on my part. It's a conspiracy theory on the people that actually implemented this system and put it into play for we, the American people. So in my opinion, you have nothing to worry about. You want a little bit of story time? Let me tell you a little bit of story time. Years and years ago, I think, not too long after I started this channel, I remember talking about Bitcoin. And I said, one day I'll see Bitcoin over $100,000, no problem. And at that time, I think Bitcoin was like, I don't know, in the teens, like 15, 16,000. It was like its very first bull run where a lot of people were looking into it. And I remember someone bought Bitcoin because I said, hey, I think it's a good thing to hold. And I think that in the long term, it's going to do fine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right. I know a lot of people don't agree with Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. And to a certain extent, I don't as well. But I can understand it as a tool that you can use to increase your purchasing power and then take that purchasing power that you increased with Bitcoin and buy real stuff like assets, gold, silver, property, etc. Right? And I remember that person coming back on a live stream and he said, hey, I bought about a tenth of a Bitcoin whenever, he bought it, and I've already lost $190. So he bought a tenth of a Bitcoin at that time, probably for about less than $2,000. And he was complaining because he lost 160 bucks or something over a week after he had bought it. And I told him, I said, this is not for the short term. For me, it's a thing that should be for the long term, right? Well, I hope that he kept his tenth of a Bitcoin, because had he kept it today, it'd be selling for roughly $10,000, $11,000. It's the same thing with gold, but in my opinion, gold and silver are much better than Bitcoin because it's something that you can hold in your hand. It's something that has actual value, something that you can use it for. Like silver, we couldn't live in the world that we live today if we did not have silver to use in all of the technology that we have, right? So it's something that actually has real use, something that is not compromised if the power grid goes down or if the internet goes down. And gold and silver is something that's of value, that is very recognizable, trustworthy, and something that humanity has used for thousands of years in order to exchange value. So I hope that this made a little bit of sense. I'm sure that some financial gurus out there, if they see this video, they'll be like, oh, you're wrong about this and this and that. One thing I know I'm not wrong about is that in 2020, the price of housing was in the 300s. Today it's in the 500s. So had you put away gold and silver 5 years ago, you'd be up right now. Your purchasing power would still be intact. That's all I have for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, take a look at the video that I put out yesterday because it's very important that you watch that video. It really is, because you have no idea what you're drinking. When you drink bottled water that you bought at the store, you think that you are protected. And let me tell you right now, you are not. Make sure that you protect your health and your family's health by putting something in your body that you yourself know is going to be healthy for you to drink, and that you don't have to worry about being poisoned by the water that you think is safe to drink. So go check that video out. I left the links on that video. I won't leave them on this one because they're supposed to be on that video, and I'm hoping that you leave a comment on that video so that you can be entered to win one of the systems, depending on how many we are able to sell through SIMPURE. And by the way, I'm not sponsored for this. SIMPURE is not paying me a penny for this. I'm not getting a commission for any of these units. I'm doing this because I love you guys and I want you to have good drinking water. Because without water, there really is no life, at least in this physical world. God bless every one of you. I love you all. God bless America. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.